The problem is when you are learning in the way we've traditionally learned, it was preparing you for a different world than the one we're in.
Okay. So do you understand that part? He says, when you were traditionally learning, it was preparing you for the world that we used to be in. So the way the teaching system is designed, is made to be the way that people used to learn in the past. People used to use in the past. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Not than it is now when you learn in school. They have books, they have the internet, you have many materials that allow you to learn, and you've lost that interaction with the teacher because of new technologies. The old system of learning was designed for the people in the past, okay? You were supposed to sit passively. You're not supposed to move when you were learning in the past.
You were supposed to sit passively, but you report to your position when the bell rings, and then
Okay, he said, you report to your position when the bell rings. So in school, for example, that's the example he gives. When you hear the bell ring, what do? You report to the teacher. You go to your spot like a dog. You know? When you ring a bell for the dog or you blow a whistle, the dog comes to you. Okay? And that's the same way that they teach you in school. And then what do? Talk to your neighbor?
What do? Talk to your neighbor? Initiate? Make shit happen? No, what are you supposed to do? Sit down and what, guys? What are you supposed to do? Shut up. Don't.
Okay? He gives you, the example of school. What are you supposed to do when the bell rings in school? Sit down and be quiet. Yeah? Don't talk to your friends. Don't talk to your partner. Don't talk to anyone. Be quiet.
Talk to you. Today, if you're in business, you don't talk to your neighbor, you're out of business. Who's with me here? Say, ah.
And he gives the example. If in business, in your work, if you don't talk to somebody, if you don't talk to your client or your partner or the person in front of you, you have no business. You have no work. You make no money. Yeah? He's telling you that action is everything.
If you wait for someone to tell you what to do in business, it's over. Your competition has taken you.
So if you wait for somebody to tell you what to do when you work, you're not succeeding. You're not making money. Yeah. Your competition, that means the other people who are in other companies or the other job applicants when you apply for a job, they are much better than you because you're sitting there doing nothing.
So we live in a different world, and here's the problem.
Okay, he says, we live in a different world. Yeah? The world that it was in the past is different from the world that we live in today. In the past, people didn't have the technologies that we have. They didn't have mobile phones. They didn't have computers. They spoke one-on-one. And that's why the teaching system was designed in that way. Teaching goes back very, very, very long time. But technology has grown. Yeah, the way that we work, the way that we learn has changed over time. Why hasn't the education system changed?
You're still learning the way you were taught to learn.
Yeah, you're still learning in the way that you were taught to learn. So in the past, they taught you to learn in this way. Sit down, shut up, be quiet, don't talk to your partner. Yeah, and we're still learning to learn that way when we should not.
So right now, you're all being very nice to me. I have no complaint. You're being very sweet, but you're sitting in a passive state.
Okay, so he's given the example in the room, everybody is sat down listening to him because he's speaking, yeah? And they're not saying anything. They're just listening to him, the same as you are with me, yeah? And he's saying, you're sitting in a passive state. And he says, that's very nice, but...
And let me explain why that's difficult. Who's ever done this? How many of you have ever gone to an environment where you learn something? Could be a university environment.
Right, so he's asking the question, how many people have gone to a place where you learn something. University, school, I don't know, a football team, a basketball team, somewhere where you learn some sports, somewhere where you learn languages, somewhere where you learn information technology, anywhere where you learn things.
Business environment, could have been a seminar, and you learned something you truly thought was extremely useful.
Place of learning, and you thought that the information that you received was very good. Yeah, it was very good for you and important for you.
It wasn't somebody selling you. You're like, this is good stuff.
That moment where you think, this person is telling me something very good. This will change my life. This will change my business. Yeah. He's asking, have you been in that situation? Think to yourself. Think of a time where you felt that you've been to a school class or somewhere, and you thought, this class is very important. This class will change my life.
Change my business. This will change my life. And you were excited about it. And then you went home and you never actually applied a freaking thing that you learned.
And then he says, after that, after knowing and being in a place where you have learned something very important, learned something that could change your life, you've gone home and you didn't use any of it. How many have you felt that way? Okay. How many of them have you ever been to a course, been to an event, said, this is really amazing, this is very important, I've learned so much, gone home, and then didn't do anything?
Before, raise your hand and shout, I. Who's done this more than once? Say I.
And he says, he asked the question, if you feel that that's happened to you before, say I. Yeah. And then he asked, if you've done this more than once, say I. And then he says, do you feel intelligent? No.
Who still feels intelligent? Say I.
And
You're
people
confused.
are confused. Yeah.
Now, I've done the same thing in the past, and I have to figure out what's the problem here. How?
Yeah. And he's saying he's done the same thing in the past. He's gone to an event, said this is amazing, learned lots of new information, and then forgotten everything he's learned. Didn't use the thing he's learned. And he's thinking to himself, how can I, he says, how can I
be this devoted, dedicated guy, commit my money, my time, my energy, go to these events, work my tail off, take lots of notes? And
he says, how can I be this guy that goes to these events, pays a lot of money, dedicates my time to these events, and then not use it?
And it's because I was learning in a passive state.
And he says, it's because you are learning in a passive state. That means you're sitting down and you're not reacting. You have no emotion. When you learn, you're sat down the way that you're taught in school, sitting down and being quiet and not doing anything. Yeah, that's the reason why when you go home, you don't apply what you learn.
Because when you're sitting like you're sitting right now, there's nothing wrong with it, but you will not. How much will you remember?
Yeah, he says, if you're sitting down the way that you're sitting down, it's great and you're learning things, but how much do you actually remember? How much do you remember if you're just watching something? Probably not a lot. I'm telling you, it's not a lot.
I asked you, where were you on 9/11? And
he says, he asked people in that room, where were you on September 11th? Can you remember that day? He's asking American people because he's in America. Can you remember what happened on September the 11th? Yeah? What happened?
You're not even Americans. How many can remember the moment when you heard about those planes crashing in the building? You could.
Okay. He says, how many can you remember that moment when the planes on 9/11 crashed into the building and you could see where you were? Can you remember that date? Can you remember that time when that happened? Probably you can. It was a very emotional state, wasn't it? It was a time that caused a lot of heightened emotions, fear, anger, anxiety, shock. Yeah.
See where you were. You can remember, raise your hand if you can remember every detail.
Yeah. He says, raise your hand if you can remember every detail. If you can remember the moment you knew about the planes crashing into the building, can you remember what you were doing at that moment? Can you remember what happened on the day before 9/11?
Wow. Tell me where you were on 8/11.
You can't remember. Why can't you remember? Why can you remember 9/11 so clearly, but the day before you can't remember anything? You probably can't even remember what you had for breakfast, what you were wearing, where did you go, what did you do? You can't remember.
You know why? Information without emotion is rarely maintained. If there's enough emotion, if on 8/11 you met a special person in a special place, and not a
Okay, so he demonstrates in that way. He says, on 9/11, you remember every detail about the planes crashing into the building because it was significant. But on 8/11, imagine the day before those buildings collided, you met somebody very special. Imagine you went on a date. Imagine you had a special moment. You would remember 8/11. Yeah? You wouldn't be the rest of us who don't remember what had happened the day before the buildings crashed down.
It might be interesting. As we go through some of the strategies, you'll probably be excited, write them down. But in this level of energy, here's what happens.
Yeah, he says, even though the information is exciting and you think it's great, in this emotional state of sitting down and being quiet, nothing happens. Nothing changes.
Happens. Whatever state you're in when you're learning, it gets linked to what you're learning.
Okay? Whatever state you're in when you're learning, it demonstrates how you learn. Okay? If you learn with energy, if you learn with passion, with power, you remember.